So how might next generation sequencing impact drug development? And I'll tell you, one of the most significant surprises that I've had in my 18 or 19 months of Foundation Medicine is really the adoption of this approach by pharmaceutical companies. I have to admit, when I came here, I was a little skeptical that pharma would readily adopt what Foundation Medicine was doing. Because why? Because by design, this approach is going to take a therapeutic that might be used for a broader population and narrow the population. To my pleasant surprise, it's not only the development groups within pharma that understand it, but the commercial teams get it as well. And so pharma is on board with patient-specific therapy, targeted therapies. There's no more convincing is needed. They're absolutely moving in the right direction. And so where we are today, we're now working with 14 or 15 different pharmaceutical companies. That's a lot of companies with whom to work over the course of 12, 14, 15, 16 months here. And we work with them in multiple ways. We work with them, an easy example is there have been a couple of very high-profile failed phase 3 trials. Yet we know, or the pharmaceutical company knows, that there was a subset of patients that responded extremely well. Well, how do we identify what that subset is, or who that subset represents, and go back and just test that subset of patients? Well, unless we have their complete molecular profiles, we don't know how to go back to those patients, because chances are, from a phenotypic standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, they look, those patients in that subset look different. So we can't say they're patients with brown eyes and blonde hair, and that's a subset. Okay, that would be a miracle. What we can do, though, is if we have the molecular profile of those patients, we can look at the responders, we can match them up to the appropriate molecular alterations that were found and see if there's a match. And the beauty is, if there is a match, think about how quickly that follow-on clinical trial can commence, and how small that trial might need to be if it's targeting a very specific population. So that's one of the things that we're seeing. The second thing that we're seeing is, as these trials get more specific, they're looking for this molecular information to continue to refine their patient populations. And so with one of the major pharmaceutical companies, for example, we have a 3-year partnership where our test and our approach is being applied to every single one of their phase 1 and phase 2 patients in oncology on a global basis. That's thousands of patients. That is more than 50 clinical trials and a fully informative molecular profile is going to be run on each one of those patients to help them continue to think about how to refine this therapy for those, for the individual patients. That should be promising to all of us. And again, it's been a very pleasant surprise to see the pharmaceutical industry's response to this approach. Another path that I'll go down touches on broadening their markets. And so where we've seen a lot of pharmaceutical interest lately is in the notion of, we're generating a lot of information here, right? We've seen 6,000 samples from patients with all different types of cancer. We're running this information at a level of sensitivity and specificity that is helping us uncover new alterations. And so we have a treasure chest of new information that has emerged within Foundation Medicine. So why is that important? Well, if I'm a pharmaceutical company and I have a therapeutic that is targeting an alteration, and I am right now utilizing it in breast cancer, and let's say it targets 10% of patients with breast cancer, I might want to know if that alteration is found in patients with pancreatic cancer, if that alteration is found in patients with colorectal cancer, if it's found in patients with rare sarcomas. So I can think about additional markets for this therapeutics. And we are seeing that all the time, where a pharmaceutical company can now come to us and say, we're looking at this alteration, or we are thinking about a combined trial with 2 therapeutics that are targeting these 2 alterations, and they want to understand how often these alterations are found in different disease states. That's information that we can provide back to the pharmaceutical companies just like that with only several thousand patients. What happens when our database goes to 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000 patients? You start to get a glimpse into really the future of clinical trials and how pharmaceutical companies and how companies like Foundation Medicine can really work together and ultimately partner with oncologists and patients to refine these clinical trials to make them as efficient as possible.